Good evening, everyone. Let me call to order this special City Commission meeting. Today is Monday, September 11th, 2023, and the time is 5:01 p.m. It says we are on air, but I don't see the image. Okay, well, okay, thank you. All right. So I'll call this meeting to order, and the first item is item 3.1, public hearing of resolution number 233-23F, adopting the tentative fiscal year 2023-2024 operating operating budget and debt service millage rates, and resolution number 234-23F, adopting the tentative fiscal year 2023/2024 operating budget. Ms. Souffrant.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. Bridget Souffrant, Chief Financial Officer. Yes, we are here tonight for our special meeting for the first public hearing to adopt the tentative fiscal year 2024 budget and millage rate. Tonight we're going to review the tentative general fund operating budget as well as the other non-general fund tentative budgets and discuss the tentative millage rate. Florida Statute 166.241 governs the budget process for municipalities, detailing how we must create and adopt a budget annually. At a summary glance, the fiscal year 24 tentative general fund operating budget is balanced at $242,908,856. This is a 7.8% increase or $17.4 million over fiscal year 2023. This budget includes a tentative millage rate of 8.1308, which reflects a millage reduction of 0.0657 from last year. And the overall citywide balanced tentative budget, excluding the CRA and the ECR, is $720,249,096. As we continue our review and discussion surrounding the fiscal 2024 budget, I wanted to focus our attention on the city's strategic plan. In this strategic plan, you, the mayor, and city commission designated 8 strategic pillars that set the foundation for future budgeting and resource allocation. You see the pillars listed here on the slide, 1 through 8. We have received some feedback from residents asking for further understanding about the strategic objectives of the city and how they relate to the budget. So we decided to give a brief summary of the citywide budget by pillar so that you can have a point of reference of where the dollars are being spent throughout the city. I'm going to go through and list them from the largest percentage to the smallest. So they're not in pillar order, but percentage order. Mm-hmm. As you can see here, natural systems is our largest pillar at 30%. This consists of all of our water and sewer funding. Next is public health and public safety at 24%, including all police and fire citywide budgets, including anything related to grants for public safety and capital items for public safety, as well as all vehicle replacement budgets. Financial sustainability and organizational excellence is next at 20%. This includes all of our internal service funds, many general government funds, and parking. Next is built environment at 17%. This includes gas tax, building permitting, housing and community development grant funding, and all non-public safety capital items. Next, we have arts, neighborhoods, and community engagement at 5%. This includes our park and recreation department, waterfront funding, library, and art in public places. Climate and energy comes in at 1%, including our Curry Park redevelopment, the improvement and replacement of the seawall, drainage improvements, stormwater improvements, and flood mitigation items. Equity and empowerment comes in at 0.9%, which includes HR and the city attorney's office. And finally, education, economy, and jobs comes in at 0.2% for economic development and the Office of Small and Minority Business Programs. Let's shift back into reviewing the general fund in further detail. Our taxable value for fiscal year 2024 increased 15.41%, which resulted in $16.6 million in new tax revenue, as reflected on the second to last row on this chart. However, the commission decided to reduce the millage rate and forego $1 million of that revenue, bringing the proposed millage rate to 8.1308. On this slide, you can see the general fund revenues by category, comparing adopted fiscal year 2023 budget to the tentative fiscal year 24 budget. This chart also displays the dollar and percentage change between the years. Let's review the general fund revenue highlights. As we previously mentioned, the property taxes increased by $15.6 million with the proposed millage rate reduction. License and permits increased $1.2 million, mainly due to Florida Power and Light franchise fees, which have increased with our new residents and new accounts within the city. Intergovernmental revenue increased $1.6 million, resulting from a state shared revenue increase of $313,000, half-cent sales tax of $852,000, and utility pilot increase of $528,000. Our charges for services increased $700,000, and the transfers into the general fund increased by $400,000, which is from an increase from the CRA supporting our innovative policing, as well as a $200,000 transfer in from the parking utility to support the newly created Mobility and Transportation Cost Center. Here are the general fund revenues by category, showing the largest revenue as our property taxes at 51% of our overall general fund revenue, followed by charges for services and intergovernmental revenue. Moving now to the general fund expenditures. Here again, you can see the general fund expenditures by category, comparing the 23 adopted budget to the tentative fiscal 24 budget, and also the variance by dollar and percentage between the years. The highlights of the general fund expenditures start with the personnel services category, increasing $13.3 million, which is resulting from increased health insurance, cost of living, and employee compensation increases, as well as police overtime increases and the absorption of 17 public safety full-time equivalent staffing that transitioned to being paid out of the general fund versus out of the grant, their respective grant funds. Materials and services increased $4.3 million, with the largest increases coming from contractual services for roadway medians and mowing, tree trimming, and support for police body cameras. We also saw increases in travel and training, as well as our waste disposal contract, fuel, equipment maintenance, and again, the creation of the Mobility and Transportation Cost Center. Continuing with the general fund expenditures, there was a $300,000 increase in the capital outlay budgeted for police department vehicles per contract. The general fund realized a $1.3 million reduction in our debt service costs due to 3 different bonds or lease contracts having final payments in fiscal year 2023. The transfers out of the general fund to other funds went down in total by $900,000. But there are some great strategic objectives to note here. We increased the general fund contribution to road paving over fiscal year 23 by $420,000 for a total of $1,420,000. As a reminder, last year was the first year that the general fund contributed additional funding towards road paving to ensure we're meeting our infrastructure needs. For a second year in a row, the city is allocating $8 million towards the vehicle replacement plan. We increased the amount of the general fund contribution by $321,000 for a total of $5 million being budgeted in the fiscal 24 budget and $3 million being allocated from one-time funding. Additionally, the general fund is contributing $560,000 towards the waterfront fund for continued programming. This is an increase of $160,000 over fiscal year 23. And again, we see the 1.9 reduction from those grants where we're no longer transferring expenditures or money out of the general fund, but instead you see that in the personnel costs.
Mayor, I have a question.
Yes.
Thank you. I know you're going to get into the details of the departments, but while we're just talking big picture, I did just a little bit of quick math, so correct me if I'm wrong, but it looked like our expenditures had increased by about 20 million and our revenue increased by 15.6 million. Is that right?
It's a flat balanced budget, so both should have increased the same amount.
No. I know that it's balanced, but I'm talking about year over year. And so I was just, so maybe you can correct me then. So I'm looking at slide 7. So slide 7 says in 23-24, the bottom right cell is 15,640. I'm sorry, 15,640,000, right? So that's what I was saying. That's our total increase.
That's just the property tax increase, not all
Thank
general
you.
fund revenues.
Thank you.
You scared me for a moment.
Nope. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Ms. Souffrant, let me just make one other point. When you say we did it last year, it was actually for fiscal year 23. The budget process is a year behind, so that we can just stay consistent. It's actually the first year being FY23, where we did the vehicle replacement plan and the other initiatives. FY24 will be the second fiscal year.
Yes, you are correct. So picking up, here's a view of the general fund expenditures from a different angle again, showing that the majority of our expenditures, or 66%, are in personnel services and benefits for our employees who work to provide the high quality service to our residents. The next largest category is 18% for the materials and services that are needed in order to provide those services to the community. Here's a slide giving you the breakdown by department, comparing the fiscal year 2023 budget to the tentative 2024 budget for all departments within the general fund only. We'll take a deeper look at some of the larger departments, starting with the police department. The police department budget increased 9.3%, or $7.1 million, and brings in $3.4 million in revenues. While there were no new officers added this year, there are 15 that are now fully funded within the general fund. The fire department budget increased 3.9%, or $1.8 million, and they are bringing in $6.8 million in revenues, and also saw an increase in 12 full-time equivalent staffing due to the grant transition. The Department of Public Works budget increased 9.9%, or $1.8 million, and they bring in $18.8 million in revenue. The department remained flat in terms of staffing. The Department of Parks and Recreation budget increased $2.8 million, or 14%, and brings in $633,000 in revenue, and also remained flat with their staffing. This slide is showing all of the general fund personnel changes included in this year's budget. Where you see the asterisks next to the various departments, these are not new positions, but positions that are transitioning into the general fund as a result of grant dollars ending, and so they're coming back into the general fund. And any other positions that are listed on here are a result of organizational reporting structure changes, and you'll see where they're being removed from other non-general fund budgets into the general fund in 2 slides. Now let's take a look at the citywide funds. These are the funds that are outside of the general fund, not including the CRA and the ECR. The combined special revenue funds have a total fiscal 24 tentative budget of $45.9 million, down 18% from fiscal year 23. This is in large part to a change in budget, moving the American Rescue Plan funds from special revenue into capital funds. Special revenue funds include gas tax, housing and community development grant funds, building permitting, fire assessment fee, the waterfront, and other general grant programs. The combined debt service fund has a total fiscal '24 tentative budget of just over $2 million, a 46% reduction due to the bonds being paid off in fiscal year '23. The combined capital funds have a total fiscal '24 tentative budget of $109 million, an increase of 28% over fiscal year 2023. Capital projects include 1 cent sales tax fund, fleet replacement fund, IT replacement fund, capital and parks bond funds, and capital acquisition fund. The combined enterprise funds have a total fiscal year '24 tentative budget of $237 million, an increase of 14%. The enterprise funds include water and sewer, stormwater, and parking. The internal service funds have a total fiscal year '24 tentative budget of $82.6 million, an increase of 4%. The internal service funds include fleet maintenance, IT, and our self-insurance funds, for a total citywide funds tentative budget of $720 million, a 9.3% increase over fiscal year 2023. This slide shows our staffing changes in the other citywide funds. As you can see, fleet is the only fund that added personnel. All of the other positions transitioned to the general fund, whether it be a result of grant funding ending or the organizational reporting structure changes. This slide shows the progression of our staffing levels citywide over the last 5 years. In conclusion, the general fund fiscal year 2024 tentative budget is balanced at $242 million, including the tentative millage rate reduction of 0.0657, and the tentative citywide fiscal year 2024 balanced budget is $720 million. We have our final public hearing to adopt the final budget and millage rate at 5:01 p.m. on September 27th. For the budget to go active October 1st.
Thank you very much. Questions, commissioners?
Could I add a couple of footnotes before the board
Absolutely.
goes into questions, please? I want to just highlight a couple of things that, have been mentioned by either the mayor and or Commissioner, so that it doesn't get lost in translation. I know the budget presentation deals with a lot of numbers here, but some of the details sometimes does not get picked up. But when we look at the mayor's budget, if we go back to the last work session where we had the presentation on tourism here in the city, the mayor brought forward a desire to have a chief marketing officer here for the city, given all of the various assets and attractions that we have to help be able to better promote the city and all that it offers to our residents. So we were able to include that chief marketing officer position within the budget. We are still finalizing the details of the job description, and once we get that draft reviewed by the mayor, that job will be posted sometime soon after the fiscal year. Another increase in personnel to the mayor's budget that I want to highlight, has to do with, and Ms. Souffrant alluded to it, the mayor has restructured his office. Sabili Welter, who is working in a new combined capacity, her position was transferred over to the mayor's office, and that attributes to a portion of the increase. The arts and public places had a half-time position. We combined it with another half-time funded position to create a full-time support position for that function, given that the function has been expanded. Another personnel item I wanted to highlight, because there was some discussion about this when we brought the plan to the board in work session on the vehicle replacement. We presented a proposal to the board to contract out for fleet maintenance service, and I know that caused some concern because our practice has been that we do not contract out services that are being performed by staff, but because we were in a critical situation with being able to maintain the maintenance of our fleet, and we were going through perhaps a poaching of fleet maintenance of employees to other organizations, we found ourselves in a situation where we needed to have contractual help to keep vehicles on the road. As it stands right now, we are utilizing standby agreements where if we have vehicles that need to be maintained, we have a number of standby agreements, I think maybe 2 or 3, where we can call on those particular companies to come in and help with maintaining vehicles. But as we indicated in the work session, our desire was to have staff perform that function. Therein lies the rationale for increasing the number of fleet vehicle maintenance personnel so that we get out of the situation where we're having to contract out that service. I also want to highlight that for the police vehicles, we know that we have a contractual obligation to replace their vehicles once they reach a certain threshold of number of years or mileage. And so we, for the second year, will be able to meet that obligation with doing that. Relative to the commission budget, you know, I've had a number of discussions periodically with various commissioners about concerns with their budgets, and have had quite a bit of focused discussion with Commission President Warren regarding the FY24 budget. We were able to dial into the budget based on the discussion with the board about increasing the $500 per event limit for events and groups that the commission support. So an increase is dialed into the budget in anticipation that the board will approve the ordinance when it comes forward. Given the level of travel and training that commissioners are now engaged in and having individual commission aides, we were able to bump up the travel and training so that it is sufficient for the commission to conduct the business of the city. So I think those are all of the highlights, Mayor, but I didn't want those highlights to get lost in all of the number presentation of the budget.
Thank you for that amplification and addendum to the presentation. Any questions, comments, commissioners? Commissioner Lambert?
Thank you. I don't remember which slide it was on, but one of the ones where you were talking about the different categories, you mentioned the IT replacement fund.
Mm-hmm.
Where does that fall?
That is in the internal service or capital. Nope, capital. The IT replacement fund is a portion of the capital funding.
And I don't know if you have this in your notes, but I'm just curious as to the amount in the IT replacement fund.
I do not have that in my notes, but I can ask Rosanna to look that up and we can give that to you.
Okay, I don't need it for today. I was just for this vote, but I am curious for that. And Madam City Administrator, I'm sure that IT is a constant focus, just given where we are in our world of technology. I was just curious if you could speak to that a little bit and how IT plays a role in the discussion of what we're budgeting for. And as we continue to move forward, I know like our different departments are implementing new technology, and how just making sure that we're properly budgeting for that.
As part of the budget process, you know, as it relates to technology, whether it is different applications that we need to install or whether we need to upgrade different applications, you know, IT takes the lead in ensuring that those requests make it into the budget. So as part of their budget proposal, when we begin the budget process, you know, they will put all of those different requests within their budget. And the way that we normally would do it when it comes to IT, when we look at the cybersecurity measures that we need to have in place. You know, IT is just a very critical function here within the city, and to the greatest extent possible, they typically are fully funded as it relates to technology. I think that we have done an excellent job under Mr. Jones' leadership with bringing us catching us up, rather, on different types of applications that we utilize. We have had situations, not on this cybersecurity side, because Mr. Jones makes no exceptions on that, nor should he, but with some of the other applications, and I would say maybe one where we use for recruitment, where we have not kept track of all of the new iterations of certain software packages. He has been focusing on getting us up to speed, you know, on the upgrade, so that we don't continue to have to make patches to technology, and then it's just a bigger challenge. So IT is just a very critical component, and we rely on him as the subject matter expert to identify what new technologies we need to put in place, what upgrades to technologies that we need to be budgeting for, and then the implementation. One of the focus point that he's looking at right now is on the laptop replacement plan, so that we don't have a situation like we had with vehicle replacements, where all of them become outdated at one point in time, and then we have this huge number, you know, that we're trying to replace. One operation that was not included in the vehicle replacement plan was police, and if you reflect back on some of the discussion that we had in work session, where we included replacement, I think it was of maybe 33 laptops for police out of one-time funding. Mr. Jones indicated that he's looking to incorporate the replacement of laptops for police in the city's overall plan, as opposed to having them as a standalone. So, you know, I'm very confident that, you know, he is well on top of everything that is technology related, and that we are in a very strong position in terms of ensuring that the city is well protected.
Excellent. Thank you so much for the update.
Any other questions? Commissioner Fox?
Thank you so much for all the time you've spent on this. I have one question about the enterprise fund. It was on slide 21, but can you go over a little bit more in detail about how, I guess, the variance for, it looks like the increase was quite a lot for that fund, and I believe all of those funds have to pay for themselves. Is that correct?
Correct. Enterprise funds are self-sustaining, so you are correct. They are typically your, what we would call or classify as your business type entities that have a charge for service fee. So that increase of 28.5 million would be supported by their revenues.
And so can you talk a little bit more about what that increase comes from? Is it something specific that we did better this year, or just?
I would have to pull out the details of each of the four funds to see which of the funds pulled up the largest increase. I can get you that information, though.
That would be great. Thank you so much.
Well, let me just add a footnote. So typically, where we have seen, you know, a significant or a sizable increase, you know, in the enterprise funds would certainly be the building fund, you know, because we are the beneficiaries of construction continuing to come in at a high pace. And so building permit revenue certainly has picked up as permit applications, you know, have rolled in. Another increase, and I don't have the percentage, is that parking is an enterprise fund, and the board did approve an increase in the parking rate. So you're seeing that increase reflected in the bottom line numbers there. And I believe utilities is another enterprise fund. And so where we have increases in fees that are being paid for utilities, all of those three major components are what is attributed to the increase in revenue in the enterprise fund year over year.
And they have very active capital plans as well between the utilities especially, and I know parking has some updates that they're trying to make to some of the garages as well. But I will get you the details.
Thank you. Any other questions? Commissioner Ward?
I don't have a question other than just a comment, and thank you so much for giving us these slides. It's very helpful. I just want to say, you know, we had that discussion last time about, you know, or I think one of the first meetings about where we, you know, the work that goes into this and how long. And I just wanted to point out as more of a thank you to the administration, because a lot of times I hear about these smaller quality of life, you know, roadway medians and mowings, tree trimming services, where I talked to some of the older residents who used to see those services, and I'm loving these increases here because I feel like, you know, people want to be proud of driving around and seeing a neat, clean city. And then the road paving, which I think we all can agree that, you know, we need to be paying more attention to our infrastructure. And so I just want to say thank you for highlighting those and making sure that we're increasing funds towards those projects because they're much needed.
Thank you, Commissioner, for those comments. Do we have any cards? Any cards? Okay. Well, then if there are no other comments, no cards, I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move approval of resolution number 233-23F, adopting a tentative ad valorem millage rate of 8.1308 mils for general operating purposes, which is 7.96% more than the calculated rollback rate of 7.5312, and a millage rate of 0.0698 mils for general obligation debt services, for a total millage rate of 8.2006 mils.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, like sign.
Before your next motion, could we do a roll call, please?
Do we need a roll call for this one?
Yes, for each one.
Sorry. Okay. You want to call the roll? Oh, the city clerk will. Okay.
President Warren,
Aye.
Commissioner Ward,
Aye.
Commissioner Fox,
Aye.
Commissioner Peduzzi,
Aye.
Commissioner Lambert.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. President Warren, you want another motion?
Yes. Mayor, I move approval of resolution number 234-23F, adopting a tentative budget for fiscal year 2023-2024.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion? Roll call, please, Madam Clerk.
President Warren,
Aye.
Commissioner Ward,
Aye.
Commissioner Fox,
Aye.
Commissioner Peduzzi,
Aye.
Commissioner Lambert.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Madam City Attorney, for making sure we stay on track. And that is the final item on this agenda. So this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.